Okay, we are, if anyone closed their budget binder, we're on page OP 72, and we will reconvene. And actually, we're at questions on gas, and to reiterate, just in case anyone's forgotten before, this is not a discussion about rate setting, this is a discussion about things that may or may not impact, may impact the budget. Councillor Gazzola.
I'm not sure what I'm allowed to ask or not ask. I want to go back. I want to, if someone could help me, this really relates to water and everything. On the first few pages, it talks about the number of customers we have, and the figures go all over the place. We have 69,000 gas customers, 64,000 water customers. I would have thought there were more water customers than gas. 60,000 sewer customers, 70,000 stormwater customers. How many tax customers do we have?
So the question is how many homes pay taxes? Is that the question?
Yes, how many, there was a number. I'm trying to see how this all fits together, that's all. I mean, these were all listed there. I would have always thought that there were more water customers than gas customers. Everybody has water, not everybody has gas.
Not everybody has water, though, either.
Well, no, but the majority of people have water. Okay, the majority do.
Yeah, there's wells, not only wells, but the north part of my ward's serviced by Waterloo.
But across the city, whereas a lot of people would heat in other different ways other than gas. I'm just trying to ascertain what these. Well, okay, that was in there in the first few pages of the report. Maybe somebody can check that out. Okay. I'd like to just quickly ask. We did increase the rates in August. Quickly, what did we do? What were those rate changes?
September 1st, 2014, we increased the supply rate from 16.5 cents per cubic meter to 19 cents per cubic meter.
Okay.
The variable delivery rate, the first 100 cubic meters went to 7.4042 cents per cubic meter. And that was a decrease from 7.6992.
Okay, that's basically the variable rates decreased.
For the first 100 cubic meters.
Well, did it increase for the others?
I don't have the numbers for the...
Okay, so, and then the transportation?
The transportation went to 3 cents per cubic meter.
And it was?
It was 4 cents per cubic meter.
It was 4 cents, okay. So those adjustments are recorded in here?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm trying to understand why the gross profit on the gas delivery goes down substantially from 63% to 59% on your on OP 73.
Through the chair, if you look at the expenses for gas delivery, they go up from 13.942 to 15.677. There's an increase in the security of our stations. That is additional amounts that we have to pay for. The cross-bore, so that's when a gas line intersects through a sewer line. That costs have gone up as well. We also have the light rail transit costs that are built in to that number as well as there's an increase in the internal charges based on inflationary rate that we're charged by the city for the facilities that we have.
Like all those expenses are they're not for gas, right? They're for
the ones that I quoted are all for gas.
No, but there's ancillary to the gas. They're not for the gas product.
No, it's not for the supply component, the commodity.
Okay. Now, on the other hand, the supply. What happens there when you've increased the rate there, right?
The rate was increased from 6.5 to 19 in September 1st, 2014. And then we're looking at a reduction of approximately 3 cents per cubic meter in September of 2015, and holding 16 all the way through to budget 2019.
Okay, do we need that big of a stabilization reserve?
As you're aware that the gas industry is basically weather dependent, we have no control over when the deep freeze will occur and how long that deep freeze will occur. So this is to help stabilize the rates for our customers so they do not experience rate shock.
Going back to the delivery, we're spending considerable amount of money on billing system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, does that not generate any efficiencies that would appear in the lines above? To spend that kind of money, or substantial amounts of money, are there not some efficiencies reflected somewhere?
Through the chair, the majority of it is strictly for billing purposes. We have a legacy system that needs to be replaced. As far as efficiencies, there are some depending on the functionality of the new product, whether some of the manual billing that we do currently can be automated.
Where are those expenses for the billing system now on OP 73? Where would I find them?
Those would be through the expenses on the gas delivery side.
Okay, so they're in the 13 million, 14 million going up to 15.5 million.
That's correct.
That's why I would have liked to expected that to decrease a little bit in view of the 4 or 5 million we're putting into the billing system.
But it's well offset by the capital program that we need to maintain our infrastructure. So the savings that you get from the billing system don't even come close to the actual cost of running a distribution system.
I guess I don't understand that, but that's... Yeah.
Okay. Your time's expired, Councillor Guzzola. Do you have many more questions?
I have a couple of quick ones.
Okay, well, we'll just go to Councillor Fernandez in fairness and come back to you.
I think my one question is a little bit similar to what Councillor Guzzola opened up his questions with, and that was the 12.4 increase from budget of 2014 to budget 2015. You said that that increase was due to, I wrote down LRT costs?
Yes.
Internal costs?
Yes.
So is that the billing system you're talking about?
It's part of it.
Okay. And what's the other part then?
The security of our regulator stations. We have to improve our security in those stations. We also have to install impact barriers through regulation where the gas meter, so if you look at your house, if your gas meter is near a driveway, we have to protect that from vehicle damage.
Okay. So you're saying you've got security around regulated centers?
Our regulating gate stations.
Okay.
So if you recall that station work that we were doing out on that road near, trying to remember the one that you asked
Dean
me.
Drive and Old Huron?
That's correct. We have to do security at those stations to protect it from vandalism.
Okay. And then the other one we said, and that was what I wasn't understanding, was a connection of water pipe crossing over?
It's the crossbore. So when the sewer line is there and the service for the gas cuts through that line, so if they had to torpedo, instead of digging up the ground, they torpedo in towards the house. If it intersects and cuts through that sewer line, you have a crossbore, which could cause sewer backup into a home. We have to go in there and inspect that before. If they have a blockage, we have to go in and inspect to make sure that it's not a gas line that's causing that backflow. If it's not, then we clear it. If it is, then we have to go in and relocate that gas line.
Okay. And those were the three main components to that?
For 2015, yes.
Rational for increase. Okay. You also said something about a deep freeze. We don't have any control over a deep freeze. Are you meaning that if we end up with a winter like we did last year, where it's incredibly cold and there's possibly more gas usage. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, if you recall last winter, we went into the polar vortex, which increased gas consumption throughout the Northeast North America. The gas prices itself skyrocketed at that point in time. This stabilization would garner and help our customers in that regard.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, just going to the capital, it spirals to 17.4, then it goes to 10 right across the board. Is that difference of $7 million totally to the billing system?
Through the chair, yes.
And at the end of this year, the billing system is in place. That's it. Is that right?
Mr. Haggie.
Sure. I'll just refer council, if you have your capital package, I can show you exactly where that shows. But
No,
it's
that's fine. That's what it is. That's fine.
yes, it's on page 145 of capital, and that
Okay.
is the answer. It's
Okay, thank
$7 million this year, and then that drops down to $1 million next year.
And so that's basically in place, though, by the end of this year.
That's the plan.
The other programs, that's the water heaters, right? Is that primarily the water heaters?
Through the chair, the rental water heaters, appliance servicing, and appliance financing.
Okay, again, why is our gross profit decreasing? Why would we not continue if we were able to earn 26% this year? Why would we not do that next year?
For budget 2015, there was a rate increase. We only increase our rates every 3 years as per our customers' wish. So every 3 years, you're going to see an increase in the revenue based on that rental increase. There's about a 2% growth that we put into the budget for additional customers. The increased expenses that you see our tanks and parts are based in U.S. dollars. The U.S. dollar has dropped from around 95 cents down, or our Canadian dollars from 95 down to 85. So that increases our costs on the parts and the tanks that we purchase because they're through U.S. dollars as opposed to Canadian dollars.
And those are the only ones available?
They're all based out of U.S. dollars. They don't base them out of Canadian.
Okay, going over to the gas transportation on 74, under the stabilization reserve, the end of the year looks like it ends up at 429, and then you start the beginning of 2015 at 1450. Where does that come from? Why doesn't that 429 carry forward there?
It should be 429, so the opening balance of 1450, that should be carry up, so you're correct.
Okay, so but then if it's 429, it's not 1541 then at the.
Not at the end, correct.
Okay, so the whole.
Schedule will be adjusted down.
Okay, all right, fine, thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions on gas. We'll now move on to water and sanitary, which take up astonishing 26 pages in our budget. Mr. Haggie.
So I'm pleased to present Mr. Whitmer to present this section of it. As I alluded to before, he's going to take the bulk of the water and sanitary presentation. I'll be back kind of at the end of his presentation to go through the schedules.
Very good.
Keith's pleased because it was either a short straw or I'm exceptionally charismatic in my presentation. I'm probably assuming it was the former as opposed to the latter. A bit of an overview. We've talked about this a lot today already. Talking about our proposed rates of indicating 9.9% is what we're presenting at this time based on where we are from a history perspective and the issues that we're having going forward. What we've also indicated that the rates would drop to match the regional rates in 2016 through 2019. And part of that is based on several factors that are influencing this. And it's based on our interim financial statements. Both utilities have significant operating deficits in 2014, 4.3 million for water and 1.0 million for sanitary, and Mr. Hagee will be speaking to that at the end of the presentation. Also, as you're quite aware, we have both the water and sanitary utilities have significant ongoing capital programs that we need to fund. And we need to fund those in order to ensure a safe water supply and a good sewage disposal system. Further, we'll be talking about issues associated with the upward pressure on rates caused by declining consumption, regional rate increases, and aging infrastructure. We'll be speaking a little bit to the comparative rates from us as well as other larger cities across Ontario. And we will be highlighting also Council's responsibilities under the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is obviously as a result of the Walkerton tragedy. So Kitchener's population is continuing to grow. However, consumption is declining. This is in part due to the fact that newer homes have more efficient water fixtures. Older fixtures are being replaced, and people are becoming more conscious of the amount of water they are using. However, not all costs for the utility go down with decreased consumption. We still have our capital replacement program, and we have our obligations for regulatory compliance. Fixed costs must still be recovered. That this causes rate increases. This chart before you kind of gives you a summary of where we have been over the last 10 years, roughly 2005 to 2014, and it indicates that we've had a steady decline in water consumption by approximately 2.8 million cubic meters of water, while at the same time Kitchener's population has actually increased by over 30,000 persons. So it's even a larger change. Regional costs represent more than half of the total costs. For 2014, you can see that regional costs for water are 55%, sanitary at 56%. These increases are related to significant costs associated with ensuring that the water supply is safe and that sewage is treated and released into the Grand River meets the Ministry of Environment standards. The following chart provides you a bit of a highlight over what those rates have been over the last 5 years. The regional rates indeed are higher than inflation, and the city has chosen to flow those rates through to the end user. In 2010, the blue bar, which is on the left, which represents water, was at 6.9%. The red bar, which is the sanitary, was at 9.9%. And the green bar is the CPI, and that's at 2.4%. As you can see, it crosses the board that the rate increases by the region alone have been more than double the inflation rate annually over the last 5 years. The primary challenge for the city is aging infrastructure. Significant portions of the water and sanitary sewer system are reaching their useful life. Based on information in the 2013 Asset Management Plan, 19% of the city's water mains were listed as poor or very poor in their condition. Significant capital investment is required to replace this infrastructure. Older infrastructure is more costly to maintain, more likely to break, and the result translates directly into adverse impacts on residents due to either service outages or blockades. The city is impacted directly by lost revenue due to unbilled water. This chart gives you an indication from 1900 through to 2010, the amount of meters of water piping, water main specifically, that has been installed. And as you go from 1900 through to 1950, there's very little movement until you get to 1950. Just after the war, and there was an awful lot of activity that was going on. When you look at the red line, that gives you a weighted average in age of our infrastructure. As you can see, it is increasing as we get older, which means then it gets older, it ages, it reaches its useful life, and therefore it's subject to repair and replacement. The useful lifespan for ductile iron pipe, that's one of the pipes that we're dealing with here, was assumed to be 80 years. And that was the length of time that we had for cast. Thicker wall seemed to last and has seemed to perform reasonably well. What has been experienced through North America is that its useful lifespan has actually been found to be around 50 years. As a result, we are having to utilize a relining of this pipe to extend the lifespan to the 80-year plan, or 80-year period where the other services are scheduled for replacement. It makes sense to replace all of them at the same time. This chart highlights the anticipated volume of work coming our way that will need to be managed. Simply put, we are looking at this situation like the report card you get from your mechanic when you take your car in for service, at least where I go. A green light means all is good and there are no issues. A yellow light means there is a warning that future maintenance is required. A red light indicates the need for immediate attention. We currently have 19 million of failed or failing water main infrastructure that needs to be addressed, the red light category. We have another 27 million in water infrastructure where the projected lifespan will not meet its intended goal. That is what we call the yellow light category. If we are having difficulty or having challenges affording the replacement of infrastructure our grandparents built from 1900 to 1950, how are we going to be able to afford what our parents are putting in place, or this generation, depends on how old you are, replacing that infrastructure installed by this generation without taking appropriate measures now? This is the liability that we're dealing with. It has nothing to do with bad planning. It's just the fact that since 1950 and moving through to 2015, obviously past 2010, there's been a lot of infrastructure that has been built in the city of Kitchener that will age and will need replacement. Old pipe versus new. The pipe on the left is old. The pipe on the right is new. Which would you rather be drinking your water from? The pipe on the left is about 50 years old. During its lifespan, the water pipe accumulates deposits of calcium, iron, magnesium, and other particulates which attach themselves to the inside wall of the pipe. As preventive maintenance, water main flushing is performed to address these accumulations. However, when a main breaks and the valves are closed to stop the water flow in the pipe can change direction, which will stir up the contents. This material can then end up in your private water supply. After the main break has been repaired, the pipe is flushed and disinfected, everything is back to normal. Residents are typically asked after that time to flush their own internal water supply system to remove any residue that's accumulated or been dislodged as a result of that, and this will help ensure that the water is clean, and this is all part of our ensuring that the water supply is safe for our residents. Providing proactive maintenance and replacement of the aging infrastructure reduces the potential for adverse impacts on our residents' water quality. The cost of preventive maintenance is less than the cost of a reactive repair. However, you need to spend money to save money in the long term. The next two slides provide examples of two parts of the water infrastructure, valves and mains. The city has over 7,200 valves, each with an expected lifespan of 40 years. Currently, over 2,200 water valves are over their expected life, which represents 34% of the inventory. It costs $8,700 to replace a valve, which means we have about $19 million in liability already on the books. Maintaining our valves through a valve turning program means they operate effectively when required. If a valve isn't turned regularly, it may leak or break when it is required to be turned to isolate a section of water main. It can take 2 hours of staff time to complete the turning and maintenance of each valve, depending on its size. A proactive annual valve turning inspection program costs $360,000, roughly $50 each to inspect and maintain each valve. The cost to repair a valve can range from $200 to $8,700 if it is required to be replaced. Approximately 25% of valves are inspected and maintained on an annual basis. During a water main break, timing is critical to ensure that the segment of pipe is isolated and water shut off to prevent more damage and water losses. This is just one area where spending money in a preventive maintenance way will save money in the long term. The average repair cost per water main break is about $15,000. Our historical annual spend on repairing of water main breaks is about $1.6 million, and in 2014 we've spent over $2 million. In construction projects, the budgeted cost for water main replacement is about $1,000 a meter. The cost to reline water main as an interim, what we call a stopgap measure, to extend its useful life so that it will coincide with the scheduled replacement of the other services, is about $850 per meter. Based on data collected for several streets where multiple main breaks have occurred, we have spent between 20 and 40% of replacement costs on just repairs alone. Using utility funds to repair mains instead of on preventive maintenance programs reduces the available money for replacing the aging infrastructure. Creating distinct asset management and maintenance programs ensures we are addressing the priorities appropriately. And you get this picture on a regular basis showing where we are. Last year we experienced an entire year's worth of main breaks in the first 3 months, resulting in a $1.4 million additional cost to the utility. The average main break takes 10 hours to repair. Often a valve will need to be repaired at the same time as the water main didn't break because it didn't work or was faulty. If the valve needs to be replaced as well, additional time is required, all of which amounts to a longer period of service disruption. If an additional break is experienced in the same street, there is another occasion where a customer is left without this essential service. According to this chart, and as identified in the Asset Management and Accelerated Infrastructure Renewal Program, all of the cast iron pipe, identified in blue, will have reached its useful life by 2030, 80 years after the last piece was installed in 1950. The ductile iron pipe installed in the 1950s and 1960s is just as poor a condition as the older water main, the red color. The amount of anticipated backlog of work yet to be completed by the end of the current 10-year capital forecast is $63 million. All of this backlog will need to be addressed in the following 15 years, adding additional financial pressures. The map that was handed out earlier today, it looks like this. It highlights where we are having water main breaks and also identifies the age of the pipe that is breaking. Technically, we shouldn't be seeing any breaks in the pink category yet, as this pipe is between 50 and 75 years of age. What is more troubling is the amount of pipe that is breaking, represented by the blue and green dots, which are in the 0 to 49-year ranges. So if you take a good look at that, it really just highlights, the condition that we're in and what we're up against, none of which was identified previously when we were talking about our asset management reports, because we didn't have that information available, or just coming into play now as we've been keeping track of where we are. Intuitively, we knew that there was an issue, but the problem is that what we've been finding is that this issue here is presenting itself much greater than what we anticipated. There's also an issue associated with reduced revenue. Water main breaks also cause a loss in revenue due to the volume of water lost from the break before it is shut off. Water losses of this nature means the water is unmetered and obviously not billed. Another issue that has been identified in the past is old meters. Older meters slow as they age, which means they don't register the actual volume of water being consumed. Therefore, it is not being billed. Over the lifespan of a meter, there can be a drop in up to 11% of the water not being captured and subsequently billed. The required annual funding to replace the old meters is $750,000. The current funding is $410,000. If the current funding were to be maintained, the situation would only worsen. Kitchener's water and sanitary costs are in line with costs charged by other large cities in Ontario. The next slide shows a graph of water sanitary costs prepared with data from the annual BMA study. The city also uses this study to compare relative tax burdens as included earlier in the slide deck. One thing to note is that BMA assumed a household consumes 200 cubic meters of water in their study. When we compare ourselves to Waterloo and Cambridge, we use 250 cubic meters, so the numbers in the deck will differ from the table earlier in the slide deck. You note that in the very top of the page, it says, it's 200 cubic meters. Kitchener's rates are just above the large city average, which is in the green section, and are similar to other large municipalities within Ontario. We are still the lowest in the region, based on the survey results completed by BMA. And that's even after a 9.9% increase. Oh, you had floated those in. Kitchener's water and sanitary sewer costs are significantly less than the retail water costs. We're just trying to give you a sense of comparatives here. And the retail water cost doesn't include the sanitary component. To put this into perspective, the combined total cost of 1 cubic meter, that's 1,000 liters of water supplied to your home and then taken away by the sanitary system, including the proposed 9.9% increase, is $4.11. If you were to buy 4 500 milliliter bottles of water, you could pay $4. 1 case of water, 24 bottles, you could pay $4. 2 large 18-liter containers, if you have a water container, that could be $4. Also, as a note, the retail water bottling industry isn't under the same standards that municipalities are relating to water quality. So, Kitchener's water is a pretty good deal, even when you include the disposal cost. And if you look at that, he says you get 1,000 liters of water removed for $4. If you break it down, we're actually less than $2 for 1,000 liters of water with the actual cost. The other side is the sanitary component of it. So it's a pretty good deal even when you include the disposal costs, and to ensure we have access to this clean water when we want it, we must continue with our current investment strategy towards infrastructure renewal by putting the money towards this replacement. Council's legislative responsibility. Council has a legislative responsibility under the Safe Drinking Water Act to ensure that they have taken all necessary steps to provide and maintain the water system properly to prevent another occurrence of the tragedy in Walkerton. Through this due diligence, Council can ensure that their actions will not accrue the personal liability that could come should they not exercise their responsibility properly. A sustainable level of revenue allows for a reliable service that meets or exceeds environmental protection standards and provides sufficient resources for future rehabilitation and replacement needs. Ensuring users pay for the services they are provided leads to equitable outcomes and can improve conservation. In general, metering and the use of rates helps ensure users pay for the services received. In summary, the proposed rate increase of 9.9% is for both utilities and is effective April 1st, 2015, as usual. As mentioned before, you have the ability to have 1,000 liters of safe drinking water delivered to your home for a mere $1.94, of which more than half is associated with the regional portion. Question: if you had a 1,000-liter container of sewage in your home, how much would you pay for someone to remove it? We do it for $2.17, and again, more than half relates to the regional portion. If there was a blockade in the main and it backs up into your home, there would be a lot more than 1,000 liters of sewage in your basement, and the restoration costs could be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Water is an essential service. We can't live without it. Therefore, the water supply system must be sustainable to ensure we get what we need. The longer it takes to replace this aging infrastructure, the higher the risk of failure and the increase in repair costs versus maintenance, which should be used to extend the lifespan. The proposed rate increase is a step in the right direction. I'll take questions now.
Actually, before we go to questions, Mr. Taggi, do you have a comment? Oh, just, okay, there you go.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to make a couple of quick comments. I know you received a lot of information in this presentation, but I thought I'd just give you a couple of other pieces, and I do apologize for the length of information you have, but just a couple of quick comments in terms of what you see even with this 9.9% increase. It only addresses one part of the objectives, which is to make sure that we address the operating deficits both on water and sewer side. It does not address the second objective, which is we must ensure that we keep our assets, the pipes, in good state of repair, or at least reasonable state of repair. And one of the yardsticks which is used is how much loss is in the system. And if you look at some of the numbers from 2013, we purchased about 22.3 million cubic meters of water from the region, and we billed only just under 20 million. So we had a loss of about 10%, 2.3 million cubic meters of water, which represents just over $2 million in terms of the the revenue we are losing. Now, why is that important? I think it's important because older the pipes get, that number will increase if we don't take care of the infrastructure, which means that's money down the drain. Now, I'm not suggesting that all of that money is because of water main breaks or the leaks. Some of that is part of the normal operating process in terms of flushing the water mains, flushing the hydrants, firefighting, but a large part of that is because of the breaks and leakage in the system. The other point I want to make is that when you look at the trend in the last 3 years, on average, we have been replacing about 4.7 kilometers of pipes, water main pipes, a year. And so that represents about 0.6% of about 738 kilometers of pipe we have. So if you do the math, what that means is it will take us 160 years to replace the pipe. So which means the pipe which is put in the ground today, it will take 160 years at that rate to replace it. Now, we all know that pipes do not last 160 years. As some of the slides showed, pipes are lasting 50 or 60 years if we are lucky. So what I'm suggesting to you is that it's really a lot of challenge in front of us in terms of, I know it's a difficult decision to make, but what I'm suggesting to you is that even with this rate increase, it does not address the deficiency we have in terms of the condition of the water mains we have in the city. And we have to make sure that we address that, and perhaps we'll bring back a report at a later time to address that part, because I'm really concerned that we are not putting enough money in capital budget to replace the water mains. As you said, 160 years is just too long. And the normal number probably should be anywhere from 1.5 to 2% of the system should be replaced every year, so that you have a cycle of 50 or 60 years replacement. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would only say that I wouldn't accept any apology for the length of the explanation. Significant increase, I think, deserves a significant explanation. Questions? Councillor Fernandez.
I have quite a number of questions, so I expect I'll run out of time. So
Very good.
Just put that out. There was a chart in our 2014 budget, OP60, and I erred and didn't bring it with me. And I liked that chart, but we don't have a similar chart here for water and sanitary. Was that just a 2014 chart? I apologize for not having it here as an example. If possible, I wouldn't mind somebody having a look at what that was like last time.
Sorry, can you repeat the chart? I'm not.
Yeah, the chart was on OP60 in the 2014 budget.
Okay. And it detailed.
It detailed our water and sanitary, and it showed some graphs that I think were critical to view in this position as we are right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just while I'm flipping pages, Mr. Taegi, you and I'll just defer to Mr. Taegi for a second, because he mentioned a number of different issues that we have for water usage, and one of them was the firefighting. You said there was a percentage of it that do we have a sense of what amount of percentage of water use the firefighting would be? And I couldn't hear what the other two you had said were.
Mr. Taegi?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the exact amount as to how much water is used in firefighting. The point I was trying to make is that when we look at the 10% system loss, that includes a number of components. Some are essential in terms of you can't avoid that, and firefighting is one of them. But I don't have the exact number as to how much water is used in firefighting.
Okay.
And sorry, Mr. Chapman died?
Oh, sorry.
The number is between $500,000 and $1 million. I'm looking at a budget document that's not broken out, but I believe it's in the vicinity of around $700,000 that fire is charged by the water utility for firefighting services. Okay,
thanks. So going to page OP81, it says here the 2013 asset management plan, 19% of the city's water mains had a condition rating below 50%. where did that number come from, the percentage number come from? And if that's the case, why are we not seeing more sinkholes and more water breaks, taking 2014 out of that? Because I believe that was quite an anomaly year. I mean, 19% is less than 1/5 of our water mains. So I guess where's the proof that that's the actual case of our? Have we done? What is it? I know we've done a tender for it where we go in and we take a look at the pipes. Have we been able to check every single one of the pipes that we have to obtain this number?
I'm going to defer specifically to our water people for that question.
Through you, the chair, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so it says here that 19% of the city's water mains had a condition rating below 50%.
50% of life, so it's gone through 50% of its life value.
Okay. So 50%, that's kind of an important number there. 50% of its life cycle. So if the pipe was supposed
It's
to
used
last...
up 50%.
Sorry?
It's like used up 50%.
Okay, so if it's a 60-year-old pipe, it's used up 30% of its life. Or 30 years of its life.
Yeah, that similar ratio, yeah.
Okay, so what I want to know is what have we done to prove that, to validate that number?
So we have the ages of the pipe, and we go by the condition for like cast iron and for comparing it to plastic pipes and seeing depending on the conditions of where that pipe is put in. So if it's a cast iron pipe that's put in soil conditions that are corrosive, it will decay quicker. So as far as that 19% had a condition of below 50%, it's based on age and it's based on age information. So when that pipe was put in the ground, so it's based on that. We didn't actually put cameras in the pipe, and we didn't actually take cross sections and cut the pipe and look at it that way.
So essentially what we're doing is we're taking a formula based on these criteria and then coming up with the fact that 19% of the... Okay, so...
Making an educated guess,
okay. So 19% of the city's water mains, and how many did we have? Total water mains?
We have close to 800 kilometers of water mains throughout the city, so 19% of that is at this condition rating of 50%.
Okay, so I'm not the best at math, so if somebody can tell me exactly how many of them are actually below that 50%. If that's the case, then why are we not seeing more sinkholes or more water main breaks? Not given, like taking the 2014 winter out of the scenario, why are we not seeing, if this is such a dire situation, why are we not seeing more?
As far as last year, yes, it was an anomaly year. We are seeing conditions where if you do get a main break, what happens is that it's sort of like a weak link. That weak link breaks, you go in and you fix it, another weak link breaks somewhere else, and we just keep on following these weak links throughout the city. So this 19%, it's an educated estimate based on conditions, based on histories, based on conditions of the material. So it is an estimate.
Okay.
Just to add a little bit more, so if you look at the map that's on your screen, which is what I had in front of you, as I indicated before, is this the pink color is for those water mains that are 50 to 74 years of age. According to a lifespan of 80, you shouldn't be seeing any pink on the map. You shouldn't be seeing any blue on the map because that's 25 to 49 years, and you shouldn't be seeing any green on the map. We are, which suggests that our pipe is not lasting as long as it should. It is breaking. Those are all the indications of the breaks that have been occurring over the last 14 years. So it gives you a representative sample of the condition of our infrastructure that we're up against and why we're seeing all of these types of breaks, because there's probably I'm not sure if there's 1,000 breaks in there, but probably more than 1,000 breaks over that period of time.
Okay, I know my time is up, so I have another question regarding that. I'll let other people ask.
Okay. And sorry, if your earlier question was 19% of 800 kilometers, it's 152 kilometers. Councillor Yaneski?
Yes, yes, thank you. I also have a few questions here as well. A question that Mr. Chapman had mentioned, that so much money is being charged to the fire department for the usage of water during fire protection requirements, was how much? 800,000? I didn't quite catch.
Mr. Chapman? I wrote it down, but I can't see it.
Through the chair, if memory serves, it's around $700,000.
700?
I believe so.
Okay, fine, and that's fine. My question then is on that, is if it's charged to the fire department, who pays for that? Like, it still comes to the taxpayer, does it not?
Mr. Chapman?
That's correct. It's a line item in the fire budget, so that is a cost that's borne by the taxpayer for fire suppression.
For fire suppression under that category. Correct. Okay, thank you.
So through you, the chair, the 700,000 that Mr. Chapman is referring to that's for the maintenance, that's for the water consumption, that's for everything. So they maintain all our fire hydrants. They take a percentage of the valve turning. So that's a total cost, including maintenance, including the water. So.
Okay, you have the chart on page 078 that refers to the decline of water consumption of 2.5 to 3 million cubic meters over the 10-year period. And even though the population has grown, the reduction has been reduced, as I would see, based on, as you pointed out, some improvements to house fixtures and water efficiency, which I understand, and also more conscious use of water, less lawn watering, and you've got those prohibitions as well. And the consumer is probably happy with that, but on the other hand, the consumer is sort of thinking as well, I'm using less water, but now I have to pay more for it because overall there's less usage, so now, but the costs are still the same. How do you address that to the consumer? I mean, I already got some phone calls over the holidays because when this report was in the paper, just, the increase of 9.9%, they're saying, like, what are you doing? Like, how come it's so high? Well, I'm trying to conserve, yet I have to pay more.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's always a tough one. It says, I'm saving water because I think it's the right thing and I'm paying more for it, or paying the same value. What you have to keep into your mind and into perspective is that there's a cost to actually having the water available to you. The pipes have to be in good shape. The water has to be treated so that it's clean so that you have it. That's a fixed cost that's associated with it. As the pipes age, then our maintenance costs go up, so the costs are associated with that. Right now, our system basically says if you use 1 cubic meter of water, you pay X number of dollars. We don't have a fixed, a large fixed portion which is unrelated to the utilization or the use. So someone who uses 10 cubic meters of water in the year only pays for 10. Those who use 200 or 250 pay for 250. It's a user pay system, and that's the most equitable way to deal with it right now.
Okay, and I can appreciate that sort of thing. And then looking at your chart that you have there, I noticed quite a lot of water main breaks in my ward, probably the most in the city, just because I guess my subdivisions are sort of in that age of 50 years plus or more. In the slide on page 079, they're talking about regional increases of passing on the dollar cost to the city, and that we are now passing on to the consumer, which is 56% roughly. What discussions have staff had with the region to say, well, wait a second, keep that, you guys pass it on to the taxpayer instead of passing the buck to the city, which passes on to the councillors, which we now have to justify these huge increases. Is there any dialogue between city staff and regional staff on let them use another approach?
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, we've raised the issue repeatedly. Ultimately, regional staff are accountable to regional council, and so it's through your representative on regional council that I would say those issues can be tabled with regional council and addressed with regional staff. But certainly we've raised the issue. We've also raised the question that Mr. Whitmer has raised around why the region charges a fully volumetric rate for their services when such a large portion of their budget relates to fixed capital costs and capital investment. So as we look at a fixed versus variable rate ourselves, we would like to involve the region in that to see whether or not there's merit in them considering it also.
So I appreciate your answer. I somehow just feel that basically they're just sort of trying to pass the buck, knowing that our council will have to deal with it and just pass it on through our increase. Is that the way they look at it there? I don't know, maybe Mayor Verbanovich could have a comment on it being at the region.
Mayor Verbanovich?
If I can respond, as you're well aware, I'm just going to be sitting at the region for the first time this term, other than a very short period back in 1997, I think it was. Certainly this is an issue that I've had some conversations with our own staff about and plan on raising those questions during the region's budgetary discussions. I mean, I understand, obviously, that significant investments needed to be made, particularly in the post-Walkerton era, but the level of the increases that we've seen passed down from the region do seem high, and I want to develop a better understanding of why that is, and we'll happily share any of that information with this council.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Neski, do you have much? Your time's expired. Do you have any more questions?
Oh, I have a few more.
Okay, we'll come back to you then.
Come back.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah. Are we dealing with the actual number figures now, or just the slides that Mr. Whitmer went through?
Yes? Or did you? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I can move ahead to it. Yeah, essentially, Jim had the presentation on water and sanitary, so if there are comments about the actual numbers of figures or whatever, it would be appropriate to do that.
Okay. So my question is with regards to the sanitary utility, page 99. And I'm looking at the administrative line and just wondering what's bringing a rise to $100,000 increase in administrative costs. It's like a quarter of the way down the page, first line after expenses.
I see the line. I don't know that I can answer that right now. It's something that
okay.
We have other people listening that I might be able to get the answer texted to me.
Okay. If not today, I'd appreciate a response before final budget. Just that was my only question on this section.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Okay. One of my questions was related to the comment about the Safe Drinking Water Act. And then I know we all had the presentation except for Councillor Schneider and Councillor Marsh, because that was a couple of years ago. It was quite a scary meeting in terms of what our responsibility is. But has the province not put in, since the Walkerton situation, and my understanding from people who have wells, that the protection and the administration of safe drinking water, the standards are incredibly high. Not to say that having safe drinking water is not important. It is critically important, and it's one of our, life, what we need to live. But has the province not put all those safeguards and guidelines in place?
Mr. Whitmer?
Mr. Chair, the standards are there. It's up to staff to put together. Do you want to speak specifically? But put together the program and present it to council to give you an informed decision so that you can then decide whether or not you have completed your due diligence as it relates to that. I'll let Wally speak about the specifics of it.
And to clarify as well, just so we have an idea of the scope, the issues that came from Walkerton, and I'll let Wally refer to it, but it's those costs I presume are largely the regional portion of this, not the portion that we can control. But please go ahead.
Through the chair, there were numerous recommendations from the Walkerton inquiry. As the province went through it, they went through the ones that were high critical to life and death of a resident. So they've implemented those regulations in regards to sustaining and making sure that the measures are in place both on the supply and the distribution of water throughout the system in Ontario. As we develop those and move on those, they start looking at the secondary recommendations that were made and are starting to put in regulations in regards to those. So are we done yet? No, we're not done yet. The first wave was the high critical areas that came out of the Walkerton tragedy. The second wave is to deal with the outcomes of that tragedy. And then the third wave would deal with as to what else do we need to do as far as protecting the source water.
Okay. And just refresh my memory, I'm thinking that that's about 15 years ago now.
2002.
2002, okay, so 12 years ago. So we're implementing all of the standards and guidelines and regulations that the province is asking us to do. So essentially, we're already doing everything that we can to provide safe drinking water to our residents, along with the region.
According to the regulations, yes.
Okay, all right. So just going back, so if we increase our water and sanitary rates to the 9% as recommended, will that in effect offset the conservation measures that has reduced our revenues? Or will it just address the 152 kilometers of water and sanitary system pipes that are at risk?
Through the chair, the 9.9% gets us to a point where we're looking at our deficit within the water utility. It also helps us with some of the infrastructure, but it does not address the 156 kilometers that's still outstanding.
Okay. So we're looking at, it will look at the deficit, it will
help with some of the infrastructure that we're dealing with, as far as our water meters, as well as the main breaks that we're currently faced with.
Okay. But it won't address the 152 kilometers.
That's correct.
What do we need to do to address the 152 kilometers?
Through the chair, as Mr. Tiagi noted, that we would have to take a look at what we need to do as far as relining. It's a real catch situation that in order to do just water without the other utilities and the roadworks coming due makes it really crippling as far as from a taxpayer's point of view and a utility ratepayer. We just can't go in and start ripping up roads to replace the water side if the roads are still in good order. So we need to look at what technologies are available to us, what is the practices out there that other utilities have used, and what has been there based on trials, what have they seen as far as lengthening the service of those water mains. So we would need to do a report in regards to the backlog and say, this is what the dollar amount would be, but these are the technologies that are available today in order to address that concern.
So we have technologies today that we can use to start addressing some of those issues.
Yes, we undertook one project, was about 1.3 kilometers of a rehab. That, with today's technology, still cost us $1 million.
Okay. When I was looking at the page OP 89, and the source that you used for the water main breaks and old water meter registering, that was actually an American-based firm, Neptune Technologies. Why are we using American-based data as opposed to our own Canadian data?
Through the chair, this is based on their experience in North America. Whether the meter is used in Canada or used in the United States does not matter. The life of the meter does decrease over a period of time. It also depends on the manufacturer of the meter. Not all meters will have that type of curve. Some will be a lot less, some will be a lot more. It depends on the manufacturing and the tolerances that they put in at the time of manufacturing.
And that's exactly my point. If it's dependent on the manufacturers, is it also not dependent on the weather? I mean, the weather in the States is significantly, in some states, it's significantly different than most of the weather in Canada.
The only place that you would see an outdoor meter would be in the extreme south United States, South Florida, Key West, South Texas. All other meters, when you get to the mid-U.S. and up, are inside the house. So weather does not play a part in the water meters itself because it's in a protected area.
Okay, my time's up again. Am I the only person asking
You're
questions
the only,
now?
well, I have some, but you can finish, please.
Okay. I guess essentially I probably don't have any more questions, except that this seems like a very doom and gloom report, and I'm cautioning us not to overreact when I see it's only 19% of our water and sanitary system. Is there something that we could do midpoint? I mean, if we, instead of increasing the water 9.9%, is there something that we could do at 5%?
Through the chair, what you're going to end up is year after year delaying the inevitable. These mains are not getting any younger. They are getting older. Our weather is changing dramatically. These mains are going to fail, and we've seen a touch of it last year. We're at the point now that as people age, our bones break. As our water mains age, and especially ductile iron and cast iron, they are subjected to the frost, so going up and down all the time, traffic on them up and down all the time, pressures are within that. They're rusting, they're corroding, they will fail. And what we're seeing is that what's happening in that one ward of Councillor Yanecki's is that it's an older area. It's not getting any younger. So you keep on delaying the amount of money that we're getting to support that infrastructure. 5-10 years from now, it's going to be higher increases for consumers because you need to address it today, not 10 years from now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Yaneski.
Yes, thank you. I still have some further questions to ask. On OP 79, excuse me, there was a reference made of increases over the last 5 years at the region. Actually, it's OP 80 as well. It's got the chart showing the increases being like from 10% to, well, 8 to 10% for the last 5 years. Where are we going to go in the next 5 years on this? Is this still going to continue on as a continuation of significant increases? I know maybe it's a premature question, but on the other hand, I don't see any decrease happening at all. And we keep talking about the infrastructure being of a necessity and aging, and we're falling behind.
Through the chair, the region is also facing infrastructure issues, water treatment plants, sourcing, wells, sanitary, pumping stations. They're all coming to their end of life. So they are embarking on the same course as we are in the distribution side to ensure that they meet their regulatory duties in regards to maintaining the safe garner of supply of water. So what you're seeing there is some of their water treatment plants needed major overhauls, and there are huge capital investments involved in that. So that's why on the sanitary side it's a little bit higher, because they just finished a number of projects throughout the region. The water side, they have to do the same thing as far as the treatment and the wells. They have to source water from the Grand River. They have to pump that water. There's increased hydro costs in regards to pumping the water back and forth. So on the regional side, they're faced with the same regulations. They're faced with the same issue as far as an aging infrastructure that they have to deal with. Further down the line, once they complete those changes, hopefully they'll be in a position that they don't have the capital requirements that they're currently facing today. But I don't have knowledge as to the specifics of their system.
Just there's a Mr. Chapman and or Mr. Haggie want to comment as well, but just as a quick analogy, I don't recall the exact specifics, but there's a water treatment plant that flew under the radar because water treatment isn't a terribly high-profile issue. That happened around the same time that the LRT was being built, being discussed, and the capital costs for it were actually higher than the region's portion of capital costs for LRT, and it got practically zero attention. Mr. Chapman.
I think Mr. Hague and I were going to allude to the same point. If you go to page 97 and page 99, it's what's up on the screen. The second last line on each of those pages is a reflection of the region's own forecast for its rates over the next 5 years. So the region has supplied us with that forecast. For water, it's between 4.9 and 2.9%, and for sanitary sewer, it's between 7.9 falling to 5.9%.
I'm sorry, I am on that page, and could you go through that again? I'm not too sure where you are, which line?
The second last line at the very bottom of the page.
Oh, right at the bottom, the water regional?
Right.
Okay.
So those percentages reflect their projection for the next 5 years of their portion of the rate only.
Okay. I appreciate that for the next 5 years or so. Okay. Thank you. The next question would be regarding page 88. And that's in regard to the types of piping that was used that was installed. So we go back to 100 years ago or so, cast iron. That was the time, that was what was used in the day. What was his life expectancy to be at that time for that item? And then we go to 1950 to 1990 time period, which is the middle one. That ductile type iron pipe was installed, and there was a life expectancy to be of that. And I don't know what that is, so maybe you can answer those two questions. And now we're at the PCV type piping. What's its life expectancy to be? So those are three questions of similarity for each of those pipes.
Through the chair, one answer, 80 years for each one of them.
80 for each one. So technology hasn't improved to make the piping last longer.
No, what they've done with the different technologies is try to get to that 80-year time period.
Okay. I appreciate the answer.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Tyagi, did you have a comment?
Just to add to that, through you, Mr. Chair, that 80 year is based upon lab tests that are done on the pipes by the manufacturer at different times. Now, the local conditions dictate as to what the actual life will be. It depends on the type of soil we have. It also depends on the construction techniques that were used, how the pipe was inspected, the backfill material used. So there's so many factors. So when we say 80 years, that's the ideal, the best case scenario that you can expect. But obviously, locally, that may change quite a bit. As we are seeing, as you saw some of the slides, that some of the pipes, in our case, are failing in 20 to 50 year range as well.
So in response to that, and whoever wants to answer it, because of our location here, and we have hard water, would that be different for our municipality here versus other municipalities where they may have softer water and their piping may last longer? Is that a factor for our piping?
Through the chair, it's more to do with the construction of the pipe, the soil, not much. The picture that Jim showed in regards to the iron and magnesium and calcium buildup, that would be more predominant in a hard water municipality like Kitchener. But as far as the life of the pipe, it's all dependent upon the construction, the material, as well as the soil.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Neske, your time's expired.
All right. So
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I completely understand where staff's coming from on this, and not that I'm planning on going there, but I think it's going to be important to have information on moving forward to final budget day on what the impacts would be. I know you've given a lot of them here, but what those impacts would be if we were to decrease any of those rates. I think there's going to be those questions asked. They haven't been asked today. I sense they will be asked. So I will proactively ask that staff bring forward that information for final budget day. Maybe looking at a few different numbers that are lower rates than what is currently being proposed. Thank you.
Okay, before I go back to Councillor Neske, I'll just get a couple quick questions out of the way. So in terms of this issue of the the fixed costs not being representative in water rates, so just from my understanding then, so for example, a single person living in a residence would be subsidized essentially then by a family because of the way that the water rates charged. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the folks that use high consumption of water would in essence be assisting those that use lower consumption.
Okay, so yes is the answer then. Very good. and that's been highlighted, does staff intend, or does the region have to do this? Is there ever an intention to change the way that water is billed to more of a fixed billing system going forward?
In the 2015 capital budget, we have a line item there to work on a study, joint study with the City of Waterloo in looking at a fixed versus variable rate structure.
Okay, good. And I really need clarity, and I'm thankful that Councillor Galloway-Seelock asked the question, because I'm not prepared necessarily to go there. But is there any speculation whatsoever, not that I would hold staff to it, what the water rates are going to be like going forward? Like, are we going to see 10% for the 2016, 10% in 2017? Is this a blip, or is this a trend?
Through the chair, I believe this is a trend. It's not a blip in the system. As we get more experience with the PVC piping and some of the, I'll say, newer generation of the ductile iron, that will determine whether we have a big trend coming towards us or just a small trend. But this is not a blip, this is ongoing. We need to get to a better life cycle than having 150 to 160 year turnover of our water infrastructure. We need to bring it down. Ideal is 80, but we know that we're not going to get 80 years of life of our water mains. So depending on what technology comes out in the next 5 to 10 years in regards to rehabbing water pipes, that will also determine whether this trend will be higher or lower.
Okay. And in terms of the trend, and I appreciate that the numbers are in the book here showing the 4.9 down to 2.9. I can't recall, and staff may not know offhand, but has the region's projections typically been on target? Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, generally yes, and they've been falling over the past number of years. I believe there was 1 year where regional council pushed staff hard at the region, and there was a reduction of, I believe, 1 or 2% below their forecast rates for that 1 year. And there's also been a modification to their projection. But apart from that, for the most part, they've been consistent with their plan.
Okay, and the last question, I respect that this is a sustainable amount in terms of replacing our infrastructure, but many would argue it's not a sustainable amount in the long term for our residents to pay. And I guess I'm not looking for a specific answer now, but is there any intention of any system that would look at people that... Actually, I'm going to hold on to that thought for now. Councillor Yuniesky.
Thank you. I'm basically done almost. Just getting back to Walkerton and the impact it has had back when it unfolded. As I would see it, would be the negligence of a couple of brothers who are operating the system that caused the deaths in the area, and then all the follow-up that followed up with all that. At that time, and in the periods before and just shortly thereafter, how was City of Kitchener's water control in terms of safety and operations? Like, we were meeting all the standards and everything was flowing sufficiently. We didn't have any problems because I never heard of anything being raised here. Is that correct, basically?
Through the chair, yes. The water system was maintained according to regulations. We never had a major incident where we had a situation like Walkerton. We've had boil water advisories for bacteria within the water, but that has been addressed through different techniques of maintaining our distribution system.
Yeah, so you found some problems. Staff quickly addressed it and tried to do the best of it, and it was controlled, and then life carried on. From the Walkerton situation, there was policies passed down by the province, etc. Were we already meeting some of those policies, or what significant one or two that you may give me an example of that has come down that has affected everybody here somehow? I'm looking for an example.
One example is the type of disinfectant that you use within the distribution pipes itself. It was standard practice to use sort of like products like bleach to disinfect pipes before they go on the ground. That was not the ideal situation to clean pipes. So now they have a mandated type of chemical that all distribution companies in Ontario must use. You can't go to Food Basics or Zehrs and pick up a bottle of bleach and clean pipes now. It's a controlled substance that is required to disinfect pipes before it's put into the ground.
So is this stuff as what the regulations have come about, has staff then followed up immediately and met the regulations without coming to council or anything like that? We're looking for direction. It's just something that you followed up, a part of your professional requirements?
That is correct. We had to set up a drinking water quality management system that addressed all the recommendations that the inquiry had. Part of the Ministry of Environment, what they did was come to each municipality, seeing what practices we had in place, what standard operating procedures we had in place, made sure that we addressed the quality management system component from the regulations, and from that they provided us with a drinking water license in regards to distribution of water.
You may recall back last spring, there was an explosion at the Greenbrook station, and chemicals were incorrectly applied.
Sorry, it's getting late. Is this question going to relate to changing anything in the budget? Is my question.
It's going to change my what? I couldn't hear you.
Is your question going to relate to anything potentially changing in the budget?
I have no idea. I'm looking for answers as to whether I should be supporting this or not, because I'm just wondering whether, and I'm leading to the page 94 in terms of the responsibilities of this. If staff is doing their job and following the regulations as they come about, and the legislation that's come, and using the example of the lakes, the Greenbrook pumping station, staff immediately took care of the situation. Nothing came to us other than maybe just an update. What impact does that have on councillors in terms of being liable to the public in terms of work that staff is professionally carrying out?
The Greenbrook situation, that's a regional site, so it has no bearing on the City of Kitchener's council's area. That has to deal with the region. In regards to your responsibilities, you hire top management, myself, to provide you with guidance and advice on our water distribution system. You take that advice and you make decisions based on that advice. If I'm recommending something that's going to prevent a tragedy to happen and council decides to go against that advice, you are personally liable up to $25,000 fine a day as well as jail time. So you do have a legal responsibility to ensure that the drinking water system, our distribution system within the City of Kitchener, is safe for our consumers.
And at this point in time, everything is safe?
Currently, yes, it is safe.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Etherington.
Just very briefly, excuse me, Mr. Chair, I hate in any situation sort of lying on my back and waving my legs and saying we can't do anything. But in this whole situation, it becomes more and more apparent that there is very little we can do about this. And it's an unsustainable type of increase that will keep coming at us. So I had two requests. One was to Mayor Vrbanovich to meet with our Kitchener's regional representatives and get across to them how serious this is to us. Because I think our regional councillors have a very easy ride on some of this stuff. And secondly, that we do more to educate the public about this entire issue, because I think there's a huge misunderstanding out there, and politically we get the flak for it. So I would think that our media people, in-house media people, I would hope that they would approach this in as many ways as possible to better communicate to the public.
Thank you. There are no further questions. I just would like to extend Councillor Marsh's sentiment. It was similar. Anything that can be done at the region, obviously, if you could bring that back. I know that there's limited. It's limited as well. I guess one question I would put out there, being that, or I guess a thought, being that social assistance would be tied to water rates. Obviously, the region would stand to suffer in terms of funding that program as well as water rates increase. No further questions, so that takes us to, I believe, stormwater or sanitary. to become storm, right? No more water.
I just want to close the loop on a question I was asked about 45 minutes ago by Councillor Galloway Seelock about the $100,000 increase in admin in sanitary. That's largely a function of internal charges. So it's tax-supported operations charging sanitary for work that they are doing. So areas like engineering and operations and whatnot, that they're doing service for sanitary utility, and sanitary utility is paying for that. So.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Galloway, do you have a question on this, or is that on stormwater?
It was already for stormwater.
Okay. Oh. Okay, please continue.
So finally, we'll come to stormwater, and for 2014, stormwater is projecting to have a negative variance at the end of the year, and this is largely due to some decreased revenues and increased maintenance costs. The stormwater projection assumes a 3% increase in each year of the forecast, and you'll see that at the bottom of the slide. And just like water and sanitary, stormwater is prohibited from paying a dividend to the city, so that's not really an option to consider. Looking at the numbers, the 2015 budget is very similar to the 2014 budget. The one exception is basically the transfer to capital other line. So you'll see that close to halfway down, you'll see the line of excess deficit revenue over expenses, and that's where we see the budgeted deficit and the actual deficit. If you just go up one line from there, you will see the transfer to capital other, and you'll see that that drops from about $7 million in 2014. It drops down to $4 million in 2015. That's the funding that's used to fund stormwater utility capital projects, so things other than the accelerated infrastructure replacement program, so road reconstructions. And that number is going down as the big project that was early on in the stormwater utilities life related to Victoria Park Lake. And so that has been funded. There's no additional funding being requested in the 5 years. So we see that dropping from 7 million down to 4, largely because of that. Essentially, you'll see that if you go down a little bit to the stabilization reserve fund, that it's negative, and you see that that number remains negative but gets better. So essentially, the stormwater utility is projecting to have positive results in each year, 2015 and out, which chips away at that deficit but doesn't get all the way there by the end of 2020.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Galloway Seelock?
Yeah, my first one is actually the same as the sanitary, and I'm going to assume that maybe it's the same answer with regards to the administrative line with 100,000, that it's chargebacks likely.
It is. Proactively, the analyst said that and said it's basically the same thing.
Anticipating. You're almost reading my mind now. That's a little creepy. Next question. So when I look at the comments with regards to the stormwater utility, and we're talking about lower than forecasted growth, but we look at the building permits that we received, and understanding not all of them are going to relate to stormwater, but there's a good amount that we would have received where we expected or we got higher than. Is there any correlation there, or or is it just a matter of the building permits have come out and the actual construction isn't done, therefore we aren't charging the stormwater utility yet?
So it's the second one. It's essentially that there is a correlation. There's a bit of a timing delay, though.
So we should be able to then see some of those increases in the stormwater utility revenues from those building permits coming in over the next few years.
Correct, and it might not be an exact one-to-one relationship,
Right.
but there should be some correlation between those.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks. One of the things that I was a little bit concerned about is that it looks to me like we're anticipating 3 years longer than what the 2014 numbers were to get to our stabilization reserve. Originally, it was 2014, in the 2014 to 2016 range, and now it's 2019. Is there an explanation for that?
I'd turn to Mr. Gross or Mr. Goland to answer.
I'm sorry. Would you please restate the question?
Sure. Originally, in our 2014 budget, the Stormwater Stabilization Reserve Fund was expected to be in a deficit until 2016, and now it's until 2019. So why the 3 years longer than what was originally stated in the 2014 budget?
I believe the answer to that, based on Nick's comments, were that there were a number of projects that were added in order to address the issues that they had, and perhaps I'll ask Nick to expand on that statement.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Golan?
Through you, Chair. There were two key projects identified through the DC background study. That was the Hidden Valley Creek hydraulic study, as well as the Balzer Creek environmental assessment, and those were identified after severe storm events and infrastructure failures and encroachments of water courses on private property that are also partially development related and were identified through that study.
Okay, so just so I know, I'm understanding completely, during a severe storm event, Hidden Valley Creek and Balzer Creek
Correct.
were identified as problems, and so was this work that we were planning on doing, or is it work that suddenly popped up?
Through the Chair, this was work that popped up. So I believe it was June 28th, 2013, approximately, when we had a severe rainstorm that ended up washing out Hidden Valley Road, adjacent to the Grand River. And so we identified there was a lack of quantity control or flood control infrastructure within that catchment. And in order to prevent that and that sort of catastrophic infrastructure failure, we identified that as a project that should be considered in our budget.
Okay, so that we haven't done that work yet, or have we done that work, or is that work projected for the 2015 budget?
We have initiated a hydraulic and hydrology study. However, we haven't gotten to the point of looking at different alternatives to implement in that area.
Then that's just for Hidden Valley?
That's for Hidden Valley.
Okay, and what was the Balzer Creek?
So through the Chair, for Balzer Creek, we've seen significant erosion downstream of Homer Watson, encroaching into the rear yards of some of the properties there, and that was brought to our attention by residents. So there is a development component there, we were asked at the time of the DC background study to look at any project that may be impacted by development, to identify said project, and that's where we identified that Balzer Creek was an issue for us.
Okay. I know last year we had numbers, we requested to see the difference between a 1% increase, a 2 and a 3. Is it possible for us to get that same kind of forecast if we didn't increase it? If we increase the rate 1%, 2%, 3%, can we get that for final budget? Okay. I think I had one other question. Maybe not. Okay. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions before we get to the next steps. In fairness, I did say if there were any questions that were missed, now would be the time. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I have two probably. The first one is on operations, page number 15, with regards to infrastructure services departments. The line item is downtown maintenance. It's about 2/3 way down the page. And there's a 10% increase in that line item of $70,000 for growth funding to increase temporary staff wages. I'm just looking to see specifically what that's reflective of. 15, page 15. Operations 15.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we identified that there was a need to increase maintenance and sanitation in the downtown in order to support our special events. and we've strategically allocated additional resources in order to do that.
Okay, so increase to the tune of $70,000 is a staff decision, or should that be under strategic initiatives with everything else?
That was part of our growth allocation. I could have to go back and get all the details around how many resources, equipment, and what was included in that, but I can get the details on what we did.
I would like that, because $70,000 increase in that line item is, well, I understand there has been a number of concerns raised, especially around sanitation, to the tune of $70,000 is quite concerning to me. So that's something I'd like more information on with respect for final budget day. And my other question is, do we at this point, I didn't see in this package or the capital package, and again, I only skimmed it, with respect to what our capital closeouts may be. It's just a question out of more curiosity than, I know we'll find out at some point, but I was just wondering if we had any indications of what capital closeouts may look like for year end.
It should be in the capital package. It wasn't explicit somewhere, so
it might not have just jumped out at me.
On the existing capital balance sheet, it should show up. I can't find it quickly, but I thought it would show up there.
I can look
anyway,
if it's there. That's fine.
We can have that number available. So
Email
we'll have that ready for
tomorrow or
Monday,
whatever.
next
Yeah,
Monday.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I believe this may have been asked already, but so if it has, I'm sorry about that. On OP3, was it asked that stormwater be included if there is any other municipalities that use stormwater component to their tax and user fees? I don't know if we had already asked that for the graph on page OP3.
Through the chair, I understand that there was a question asked previously about which other municipalities have stormwater utilities. I believe that was the question. And we did get an answer for you for that. The current municipalities are in Ontario are Kitchener, Waterloo, Aurora, London, and St. Thomas. They have stormwater utilities. Mississauga will begin their stormwater utility in 2016.
Okay. Okay, I guess, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Aurora was one you said, and I apologize, what was the other one you said?
Yes, Kitchener, Waterloo,
Yep.
Aurora, London, and St. Thomas.
London, okay. And do you have a sense of what their percentage fee is?
I can give you a comparison to Kitchener's average, and Kitchener's average essentially is $122 per year.
Okay, yeah, that's our average.
Yes.
Based on the size of the houses and
yes, it's average across the municipality.
Okay.
And Waterloo's will be 79. Now, what we understand from Waterloo's is that they will be anticipating some additional significant increases in the next numbers of years. When Kitchener set the rate back in 2010, it was set at what was called a sustainable level. Waterloo's was set at what they called an existing level, and they are working toward reaching a sustainable level. So we can compare Kitchener's 122 to Waterloo's 79. Aurora is 58. London is 165. St. Thomas is 88.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The other question I had was on OP9. When it talks about gas delivery, so underneath that title, it talks about a deficit of 5.6 after paying the dividend. The difference is largely caused by the increased need for capital funding. My question is there capital funded projects that can be deferred into 2016, 2017 that would reduce that deficit? So maybe we can't answer that right now, but maybe that could be a question that could be answered.
Through the chair, respectfully, I'd suggest that's a good question to hold until next Monday. Mr. Malcolm will be back, and that's a capital budget question, so I would raise it when we come to the utilities section next Monday.
I kind of wanted it so that we could have that information in advance. Is that possible to send him that question so he could have that?
What I'd suggest is we can give him a heads up that the question's been asked, and then he can address it when we present that part of the forecast.
Okay, thank you. 2013, I think I had already asked this question, and that was related to the percentage of residents who own homes that are assessed at the $269,000. We had talked about the executive home percentage. You were going to come back with that information, right? Okay. And the other one was on OP 72. And that was, sorry, when I look at the difference, I better find that page first. One of the columns in gas utility says projected 2014, and I've seen on OP 16 restated. Can you, I mean, it sounds like a really silly question, but can you explain what is the difference between restated and projected? To me, it would seem that restated means that we took a look at the budget and saw where we were negative or positive, and projected is what is anticipated to cost.
So through the chair, projected that you'll see in the enterprise forecast is truly the projected amount that we believe will end at the year. So that's a staff's best guess at, variance plus or minus from budget to the end of the year. And as I said earlier in the day, we will have final information for final budget day on tax and all of the enterprises. So council will be fully aware of where we ended when they're setting the budget. As far as the restated column that's in the earlier schedule, so on page 14, 15, 16, to compare the 2014 budget and the 2015 budget for taxes, in some cases there are restatements. So it's a question that Councillor Gazzola had asked earlier in the day, where sometimes we've restated the budget, the 2014 budget, so council's approved a budget, we've kept to that budget, but in 2015, the responsibility for a certain task or a certain position has moved from one area to the other. And if we don't restate the budget, it could make one area look like they're going up 30% and another area go down 10%. So instead, we just restate and say, you know what, if that person would have been in that area when the budget was passed in 2014, this is what the budget would have looked like. So when you look restated 2014 to 2015 is an apples to apples comparison, whereas it would be kind of apples to oranges in some cases if we did not restate.
Great. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Okay, there are no further questions.
So, on to next steps. Just to draw council's attention, I'm sure you're all well aware we're going to be back here next Monday and talking about capital. There are public input sessions available, so we've had those in the past. February 2nd is kind of public delegation night when citizens are able to come here. Like we've done in recent years, we do have the interactive budget website up and available, so people are able to provide their comments that way. All of the input we get, we'll be summarizing and providing that to council again, so you're aware of what citizens are saying about the budget, what they like, what they don't like. And then final budget day is planned for February 23rd. We have been keeping track of things, so we'll get that off the USB key, put it up on screen just for council to see and just to make sure that we picked up everything and that it's generally clear as to what's being asked and the timing.
Councillor Fernandez?
Just a quick comment. It came to my attention around 6 o'clock that the webcast was no longer live. One of my family members sent me a message. So if we have a long day for capital, maybe I don't know if we have to do something differently, but just wanted to let you know.
Apologize. You did note that, and it slipped my mind. Ms. Chapman?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's a fairly short list, and so I would suggest that we'll just leave it up on the screen for a few minutes. Council members can look through it, and assuming there are no questions, we'll take a motion at the end to ratify the direction.
I'm not seeing any questions. I would. Oh, questions? Sorry, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Just let me look quickly. I may have alluded to it early in the morning, but didn't actually maybe ask with regards to winter operations. Whether or not we needed to get that information to look at if we need to put more money towards the chronic deficit. I know I talked about it. I'm not sure if I was clear, though, that I was looking for that information to come back for final budget day. It may be on there, but I may not see it. I just thought it would be near the top because it was early in the day.
Does that capture it?
Yeah, like I think Mr. Whitmer said that we are at the 5-year level. It's just a matter of, with the last year projection or last year's numbers, if we're still underfunded, if it's better for us to look at funding it proactively, and then if we have those surpluses, that we could actually put that towards the tax stabilization. So I don't know if that makes it a little bit more clear.
I would just add to that the arts and culture item came up in council. I'm not sure. Anyway, Mr. May?
Yeah, can I just seek clarification through you, Mr. Chair, on the third item on the golf line, provide a comparison of Kitchener memberships to other municipal courses. There were a number of comparisons to other municipalities in the documentation already. Was there something specific that council or councillor was looking for, just so we make sure we get the right information?
I believe it was Councillor Etherington that asked that question. The question, Councillor Etherington, is there anything specific in the golf item, provide a comparison of Kitchener's membership to other municipal courses? What is it that you were looking for in that? Oh, sorry, I'll click you in here if you want to. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, Michael, all I'm trying to find out is whether we have a particularly low membership or high, or just some comparison with a similar sized
municipality.
City or municipality.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I'm just, it probably is just a simple arithmetic kind of scenario, but if we were to support some of these strategic initiatives, is it possible to break out sort of the differences if, say, for the top two, I don't mean to really belabor the point, but I think there are some that seemed clear that council was interested in supporting and some that were sort of ambiguous. Is it possible to break them out a little bit differently by, I don't know if you would say needs or wants or ability to impact tax base and ability not to. Maybe I need to be a bit clearer. I guess I'm just sort of trying to figure out where we could benefit by using the funding to affect the tax base and where we would be not affecting the tax base.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, I'm not asking the question right. Maybe I just need to rethink it a little bit.
So they would all affect the tax base, and if there's an interest in a different amount than what's shown there, come final budget day, we'll have the tracker going and we can type in, so for tax stabilization reserve fund, if that's one, it's an amount, but it's not tied directly to a position or any of that sort of stuff. That's one that could be 100,000, it could be 250, it could be, we can type that in and you'll be able to see live what that looks like.
Perfect. Okay, then I'll just leave it as it is then. Sure. Thanks.
And the broken out numbers I think it's twice in the report, but on Op 7 you can sort of pick and choose and figure out where you come out at the end. Councillor Galloway-Seelock?
Yeah, I was just noticing, I think there may be one other missing unless it's higher up and I just don't see it, that I had asked for an issue paper with regards to the $20,000 of the Art Sustainability Fund that was left over from 2010. And if we could bring an issue paper forward with regards to that. Is it there? Or?
Yeah.
No, that's not part of, it was outside of what we were doing with the, it was still the 1%, but it was outside of what we were doing with the pillar organizations.
Okay.
So what we can do with it, whether it goes towards grants, but it should stay towards arts and culture, but really what that $20,000 is.
Mr. Wilmer?
So the item number 11, total costs all in for arts and culture by January 19th, we can build it into that report. Or sorry, at number 12, arts and culture, how the CEI flow-through funding has been utilized. So there's a bit more time for that. So it could be part of item 12.
I don't know if that's exactly capturing. If you guys have it, I'll leave it with you. It's just I think it's an issue paper specifically on the 2010 funding that was left over of the $20,000. So I don't want it to get tied into that overall number. I want to see if it's not being utilized, how can we utilize it? So as long as that you've got that captured somewhere, then I'm fine with it. I want to keep it separate from those other issues, though.
Okay,
too.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'll just provide comment. I know that, and I feel guilty because it's in Councillor Singh's absence, but for the arts and culture item, which we're kind of mixing up committee and council, but that's fine. I would really rather this not be rushed, so if staff cannot get all of the proper information, I would rather a more complete report, because I will be looking and asking questions. Did you include the rental fees, that deal that the museum gets, for example? I want to make sure that we include everything so that we're not sort of being fair and casting ourselves in the proper light. Okay, so with that, there's no more questions. Could I get someone to move this? Moved by Councillor Fernandez. I'm assuming there's no discussion. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So with that, I believe this meeting is adjourned. I will say, first of all, I would like to thank staff. I thought you performed admirably today. I think it's important to mention that we did go, even with the hour taken out roughly for the special counsel, we've gone considerably over time. And I don't think I need to point out the fact that we need to be more succinct in our comments and our questions. And I think at some point we may have to revisit our meeting efficiency program, because this is atypical, I think, of the average council.